All right, coffee's done. So unless I'm going to go make more coffee.
No, I'm not giving you a chance. Ready?
Do it. Welcome back to the Aviation RC Noob Podcast. You found us. My name is Joe.
And I'm Matt.
We're here to be with you along your journey and to share our experiences in RC aviation. If you have any questions, thoughts, or want to share a flight story, hit us up at aviationrcnoob@gmail.com. Now, buckle in. Let's take off.
All right, welcome back. It's episode 29, Spitfires and Trust. So Joe and I are going to talk a little bit about the next piece of our history series, which will cover fighters, all the different eras. I think we're going to start in World War II. There are certainly abundant, but we'll kind of meander around to some planes that just have stood out through the test of time. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the FAA's, the AMA administered FAA knowledge-based test called TRUST, and we'll get into that in more detail. It's but before we do, why don't we do like we always do and talk about what we've done in the hobby in the last couple of weeks since we talked to you last.
Yeah, sure. And I'll just preface, truthfully, we're starting with the Spitfire because this is a style we are interested in doing and talking about planes, but also we're kind of coming up on the right up against Flight Fest. There was, what do we want to do? And this is like, okay, well, I did a bunch of research in the past on the Spitfire, anticipating an episode dedicated to it. So let me re-reference some notes. So hopefully I'll do it some justice, but We'll get to that.
And also know that there's so much information on every single plane we talk about. Mm-hmm. We are just brushing the surface. So if you like what you're hearing and you want to know more, we're not an encyclopedia. We're not the internet. That's what that's for. If you want to know more, go in, dive deep. It goes all the way down to the bottom.
It really does. So we'll return to that in a second. I just wanted to preface that before we got too far in. As far as build stories and such go, I am going to end up returning to the statement of, I feel like I haven't accomplished a whole lot. That said,
no, sort of, but you did.
Yeah, right.
You did get to work,
but I did get to work. Did we have a build night since? Or was that a Saturday build since the last time? Or am I crazy?
There's been a whole lot of summer in between now and then, and I think we did, and it was awesome.
Hang on,
it was Saturday. We had our Saturday build day.
Yeah, it would have been 2 weeks ago.
Right. It was when it released.
Okay. Yeah, that's right. So we did, and I was working on the 7 that day.
Yeah, you actually worked on it not that day. I think you were working. You were working in your garage on the house, on the bedroom, but in a different time. I think either later that night or the next day. I was indisposed doing, I don't know what, but you were in the build party with a couple other people, and you were putting together the 7. And I think I ended up popping in just to see what you guys are up to. And I was like, look at that. You guys are building 7. Nice.
Yeah. However it played out, I started building the 7.
Nice.
It's time consuming getting all the skins cut out and applied to the board. And so that the skins have all been cut out. They've all been applied to the boards. I'm kind of keeping an eye on the pieces because I'm starting to assemble it, but it's not done yet.
Yeah.
And I don't want to run into the same problem that I did with the Vulture, which is letting it sit for a very long time in the humidity, operate differently on it and get that plane all warped up. So I'm keeping an eye on that. But the wings, the main part of the wings have been put together.
Nice.
In that it's been folded over and done. I know it's supposed to be a symmetrical airfoil, and one side was more symmetrical than the other side, so I'm curious to see how that flies.
Yeah, so the way the Hangar RC and the designer of that plane had added formers, so to aid in, I guess, rolling the foam around the shape. but it's, I don't know that I found it to be helpful. It sort of was, and it kind of wasn't.
Yeah, I'm liking the formers. The issue I had was more that because I had,
You have to
with
be
it being
careful.
my first time.
You have to be really careful to line up the back.
Yeah.
When it comes back, you got to make sure that not only do you put it there, but you like hold it there until it's good. And you were used to just fold it over and wherever it lay, it's good.
Right. And so when it comes off the top of the formers, off that wing spar, there's some care that needs to be taken as that whole wing is kind of cooling and gluing in, that you maintain what's going to be that symmetrical shape. Because basically, I got more of a traditional airfoil shape on one wing, and when I realized my mistakes and what went into it, then on the other wing, I got that more symmetrical airfoil. So,
well, there is a fix for that.
Okay.
It's the heat gun. You basically reconstitute the glue on the top. You kind of blow the heat gun in. That's a
lot of glue.
No. And basically, no, you're just reheating it. And then if the air is hot enough, it'll reheat the glue and it'll start to melt. And the hot air will keep it melted so that you can reposition it and put it back. And then you're good. It's not fun. It's not easy. And it's certainly, you could melt the foam, as I understand it. Mm-hmm. So I call it the last resort. But if it is a solution, or you just build another wing.
Do you have? Well, I can't build another wing because that's the skin I got.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I could,
right.
But that'd be without a. Do you have a hot gun?
I do. Yeah, I can certainly bring it with us.
Speaking of, during this last 2 weeks, I found out yes, I am going to Flight Fest. So,
woohoo! Yeah.
Right. So if you guys are listening to this on this Saturday, which would be the day it would release, but for us this coming Saturday, and you're out at Flight Fest, hey, we're both out here.
Yeah, we'll be out there. We'll be in blue shirts with our little orange logo there in the corner with the host underneath it.
So keep an eye out for us if you're out there. But getting back to I've got the wings done, and I'm trying to get the wing tips on. So it's got these like add-ons that kind of clip, like glue onto the end of the wing tips. And it's for the design and shape and on. I like the idea of them, but they are proving to be a bear. Is the proper way to describe that to get on and get right.
Yeah. Again, it's one of those like, I don't know, man. Is this little? I don't know. You're like shaping a little boat or whatever. Mm-hmm. And it's really weird and tricky. And there's a lot of hot glue. And if you're doing it at the wrong point, it's really hot and painful. If you wait too long, then you can't really shape it. And, but that said, when it's on, it looks really cool. I mean, that shape of the wing, the way the wingtip sweeps back and comes together and all that stuff, like when it's done, it looks really good. And it ends up being worth it. But it isn't part of, I'll call it, and it's not a flight test thing. So, but it's not a traditional flight test method, I'll call it, maybe.
Right.
So it's something new. Something you kind of have to play around with and kind of figure out, is this how you do that?
Yeah, it's just different. I like it, and I like what it's going to end up looking like. It's just a different build method than we've done before, and so it's different. I'm having to figure out. And really what I'm dealing with is, I saw it in the video where he kind of like trimmed off the excess skin that was hanging off the edge of the wing or the end of the wing.
Yeah.
And I should have done that.
Yeah, you're probably thinking
trim off excess skin.
Yeah, you're probably thinking, oh, I'll just tuck it under one under the next and it'll be fine.
Right, kind of thing.
But what you don't realize is how hard that is to do while you're shaping it and letting the stuff cool. And apparently I'm going through puberty here. Anyway, but yeah. My voice is cracking. Like, what in the world's going
on? Yeah, so I'll be continuing to build the 7 while we're at Flight Fest.
Okay, good.
I may get a little more time to tinker with it before Flight Fest, but I'll be continuing to build it at Flight Fest for a hopeful maiden. And then, I've I've had a look at my Corsair since it's been in the tree enough to know that I have popped one or both of the servos inside the fuselage off the inside of the fuselage. So
wait,
not
like
only
the control arms
no.
or
The servos themselves
are popped out of their mooring.
they came unglued.
Oh, okay.
Because the force of the impact wrenching on those control surfaces, it just popped them right off.
Okay, quick question for me.
I did score the side of the servo.
Okay, so you took off the stickers and you scored the servo.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
That's almost
It
about
was a
as
heck
good
of
as
an
you,
impact.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's about as good as you can do, really.
Yeah.
The only other thing you can do is kind of build up I don't know, like a cage around it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you'll just have to do a little bit of surgery and kind of open up, but make an access panel and, you know, do what you got to do to it and put the access panel back.
Wouldn't be the first access panel I cut in that plane.
No, especially not back there.
So, but the nice thing is those servos are mounted like up in the wing cavity. So I pull off the underside. I've already done some cutting and trimming around those wings, so I can get in there before. So it's not too. It wouldn't be too much more to get back in there and reglue them in.
Nice.
So yeah, I'll looking forward to working on that some more. And then while I haven't done it yet, by the time we get to Flight Fest, I will have been working on getting packed for Flight Fest. So I've got to
I was going to
pull
ask
out. No, I haven't started yet, but you know, it was good. Like I kind of potentially started packing largely because I pulled my trunk out and got my trunk.
Okay.
My trunk situation figured out because you went to LARP with my wife and I this past weekend.
Yeah,
Joined us for that.
Yeah, that was fun. It was good to be able to spend the whole weekend with you guys camping. And despite it being the middle of summer, it was really, honestly, a pretty beautiful weekend. I think we lucked out.
It was a good weekend to hit each other with foam sticks.
Yeah, it sure was. And then of course that kind of went and taught me that I need to repair my air mattress if I'm going to use that, or I got to buy one tomorrow if I'm going to have one for Flight Fest. That's not like a giant, like a queen size mess. But yeah, I got to test out the equipment I was going to bring to Flight Fest because that's how I went to LARP was pretty much how I'm going to go to Flight Fest with the addition of a tent. As far as like the camping aspect of it.
Right.
It's being lightweight. So good.
All right. Well, what have you been doing? Because that's about all I got.
Well, I thought I'd be a heck of a lot further down I'll call it the prep for flight test trail. And I did pull out the Solvair. I haven't had a chance to repair the nose. That's mostly what got damaged. And to kind of build a internal structure for it, it seems like it kind of needs it. I built it as almost like a hollow frame fuselage, and it kind of needs some ribs and some structure internally. I think that would help. You know, it's just one of those things you design it one way and go, yeah, that's not the best way. I know the Prandtl D, I was hoping I could get time for finishing the build video. I already have plans set. I was hoping to finish the build video tonight, but I looked at my lawn that looks like a jungle. I was losing my dogs in it. So I decided I would cut the lawn today instead, and I'll finish up the build video tomorrow. I'm at the very end of that. So the hope was to finish that, I'll call it that journey, and be able to have a product that anybody who's interested in designing or in taking that design and building and flying it, that you'll have not only plans, but you'll have a video to go along with it so you can kind of follow along. With that, I was hoping to do the little touch-ups on some planes that I want to bring with. I want to bring the Solvair. I would love to have the J1000 ready. I don't know that it will. I took out the HRC7, my orange yellow one, and I gave that a spin. I went and did some repairs, used some of that foam tack stuff.
Right.
And I got most of it repaired, and I think I had the elevator servo horn kind of ease out of its mooring somewhere mid-flight. So it kind of went from being like controlled to not so much.
Oh.
Yeah, and it's okay. I mean, I got it to the ground okay.
Okay.
And then I realized like, darn. Okay, well, let me go figure. I mean, it did have a kind of a hard-nosed in landing, but it withstood it's a pretty sturdy craft when you're done building it.
Okay, so we're still gonna be able to fly
Yeah.
sevens together.
Yeah, heck yeah. And my plan, one of the other things I plan to do, as part of tomorrow's get the heck ready for Flight Fest is to cut out I think 4 or 5 Spitfires in a stack, kind of like I do when I do STEM. So that way, Joe and I have a couple Spitfires to build, and we've got a couple extra in the wings. And I mean, we bring out the Spitfire, we talk about it a lot because it's just been such a good flyer for us. And that's part of, I think, why we chose the first fighter we talk about. It's the Spitfire.
Yeah. It's just, like, as little flight experience as I have, truly, comparatively, to, like, you and others in the hobby, just, I keep going back to a Spitfire as, like, the plane that I've enjoyed the most. Aside, Fogey aside. Like, I love the Fogey. It's gentle, it's nice, but, like, okay, the moment you step out of, like, the designated trainer, Spitfire.
Yeah.
Spitfire all the way.
Yeah. It's just such
it's just one I keep going back to.
I call that, that plane is a friend.
That's a friend that will, like, stick with you, and even when you, like, fly it into a tree and rip it to pieces, they still come back and say, put me together, I'll still be your friend.
It's cool. Look, everybody makes a mistake. It'll be all right. Look, let's hold off and we'll work together. We'll get me back in the air and it'll be all right. Don't worry about it, man. It happens. It's cool. Yeah, good. It's a good friend.
Yeah.
Nice. So, I mean, and obviously the other thing is just, really getting ready for Flight Fest. I have all of the mugs I want to bring. So if you're interested in getting a listener mug, if you find us, we've got them, we'll have them with us. And let's see, I've got all my shirts, all my airplane shirts and my flight test shirts and my volunteer shirts. Cause we're going to be, I think Joe, you and I both have signed up to be volunteers.
I need to still. Don't let me forget to do that tonight.
Okay, yeah, but please do. And I've got to fill out the slots that I want to take, but yeah, if you're going and you haven't thought about it, I mean, the event mostly runs on volunteers, really. So people manning the different stations, like making sure that everybody on the flight line is safe. You kind of need enough people to make sure that they've got the lookout and that they're not doing 12-hour shifts and not really actually doing anything fun at Flight Fest themselves. Yeah, you kind of want to have enough people to roll through, what am I trying to say?
I don't know.
That you're not stuck at the flight line the entire Flight Fest as like the safety guy, or one of the safety guys. You want to basically be able to have enough volunteers where you can, spend a little bit of time doing stuff that helps the event, and then the rest of the time going and doing the things you like to do.
Many hands make for light work.
That's the way. Absolutely.
Yeah. And by the time this goes out, it'll be, too late to change any of that. But for the next Flight Fest, consider signing up to volunteer. Like I said, I've still got to tonight, but I will.
Yeah. Good. Cool. And then I think the other thing that I've been kind of chugging along now that I've got all the 3D printing done, and I've taken out what is that product called? It's the XTC 3D, which is a 3D printing epoxy smoothing stuff, resin, basically. Okay. And it's since I've sealed all the subparts, I've been putting that together, and it's starting to look like a submarine now. And,
nice.
I'm basically at the part where I'm putting in the watertight cylinder stuff and wiring everything up. And I've been continuing the private pilot journey. Nothing this past weekend or this week. I'm not going to be able to do much of anything. I knew that was kind of going to happen, but last time I was doing anything with that was, besides doing the typical practice of the stall maneuvers, we went up to the Fayetteville airport last time and we did about 7 or 8 touch and goes on the Fayetteville runway, which is about 8 times wider and longer than the little patch of a strip at the airport that I normally take off and land from. So a very different experience.
Yeah, the difference in a runway between an airport and a municipal.
Yeah, absolutely. And basically the one we have at the airport I take off is like a 2-lane road that goes for I think about 800 or 1,000 feet, and the Fayetteville is one that takes the Boeing 747 kind of planes. It's much longer. But by doing that process and going through it over and over and over again, I really felt very comfortable with, not only landing and taking off, but pulling around the pattern.
Actually flying the pattern.
Right, flying the pattern, and basically cutting it at a 20-degree bank angle up to a certain point while you're still climbing. You get to a certain point where you're climbing, you throttle back to I'll call it the straight and level, engine level, 2,300 RPMs in this case. Basically, as you're doing that, you're coming around the downwind leg, and you get to a certain point, you make sure that you're lined up with the runway itself, that you're parallel with it, and you get to the end of the runway and you say, okay, it's time to put in, and then now, of course, I'm not going to remember what it is, but you start prepping the carb, and you put in the flaps, and you start slowing down, and once you get to the certain point, then you put in the next level of flaps, you do the turn, looking for the milestones of like, okay, this is where I want to turn here, this is where I want to turn here, and then the last little bit, do the last turn, line up the runway, put in the last bits of flaps, slow down to as slow as you want to, and just watch your glide slope and make sure everything's kind of lined up and ready. And you're kind of playing with the rudder, and just make sure that you're not losing too much speed, too much altitude, and you're kind of playing a little bit with the throttle, and you just kind of bring it in almost on a glide. So you really have almost no power, and you just kind of bring it in, and then the last minute you bring it into that. Now I'm going to blank on it again. I did it again.
The landing flare?
Not the landing flare, but the landing flare is in that. Oh my God, I'm blank on it. That ground effect. So basically you bring it down to the ground effect and you flare, and then you let that ground effect give you that extra lift while you have no power and you're slowing down to bring you gently from the positive lifting state to a slightly negative lifting state, in which case you ease down to the runway, nose up, and you wait for those back wheels to almost hit, and then you pull last little flare so that you just drop. You slow and drop, and then nose, and you basically do a wheelie for a little while until it comes down on its own.
Until you bleed off enough speed that the wings aren't generating the lift, and the nose goes ahead and drops, and now you're firmly on the ground.
Exactly, and have the elevator up so that the back of the plane is still kind of down. That's not gonna, and then of course, because we're doing touch and goes, like, okay, great. And now throttle in, get the rudder so that you're not steering all over the place, that you're, straight and level, and wait for the airspeed. And now you're fast enough, pull up, and away you go. Flaps up.
Very nice.
And we did that, 7-8 times. And then going back to the little tiny mini airport, it's like, oh geez, that's a tiny runway. But I mean, it really wasn't hard. It's a comfortable airport. So, and I think that's one of the things that when I was getting advice as to where I should probably take lessons, he's like, look, if you can learn and land on that postage stamp of an airport, you will be comfortable landing nearly anywhere. Yeah. And I'm like, that's pretty smart. So anyway, okay. So that's that journey. And that's pretty much, I think, what we've been doing with aviation. I passed my medical.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah, that's one of the. I mean, that just means that I'm not colorblind, that I can see well enough, and I don't have any major issues health wise. Which I kind of knew.
All things being perfect, you're not going to stroke out flying the plane.
Pretty much.
Nice.
But it's one of those things that if you don't pass a medical, this is where you stop your journey, because it's not worth spending no more money. It really ends up being a waste. And there's other avenues to take flight. RC is obviously one. So let's get back to talking about RC.
That's right. So later this month, the night of July 23rd, that'll be a Friday night. It'll actually be, yeah, so it'll be the Friday night after this episode goes live. We'll be having another build party, 8 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard, Eastern Daylight, whatever the current, but 8 to 11 Eastern Time will be the next build night. We'll be in the Discord server, so you can check in the show notes for a Discord invite link. Keep an eye on the Facebook page for any updates on that, or if you get into the Discord, we tend to post the updates there if anything comes up or changes.
Excellent. Perfect.
Okay.
Well, then I guess that brings us around to, with all the, I'll call it the regular show maintenance. Let's get around to our topic. Let's talk about some Spitfires.
With us talking about the historical side of things, and so way back, I'd say 4 or 5 months ago, you and I started talking about, things we want to do with the show and this, that. It was actually about the time we did that year review episode.
Mm-hmm.
I dove, full into Spitfire research, documentaries. I watched several hour-long documentaries. Some of them repeated the same information, but from different perspectives and this, that, and the other. I did some reading on it and this, that, and I have forgotten far more than I will recall.
Well, we don't have enough time here for that
no,
we
also
work.
don't. Right? Yeah, there was so much information out there. So I'm just going to kind of hit on some of the what I found to be bigger points and things that I could remember. I did a little sort of a pre-show brief on it just to get myself kind of back up to speed on a lot of it. But as far as planes go that have interesting stories and they were enjoyable to learn about and just iconic, because the Spitfire truly is iconic. You see the wing shape from underneath and you just know what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, you see one of these and you know.
There's not too many elliptical wing forms.
There's not. And there were reasons why it was chosen for this plane. But if you have remote interest in learning about planes or learning about this one, dive in. Because this one had some real interesting and real enjoyable stories behind it. So,
nice.
Kind of going quickly through some of that. The Spitfire was born out of the Supermarine. So way back, I remember saying the P-15 Spitfire, and this. I was now I want to go back and smack myself. Because there was no there was no designation of that note of that sort. That's a different line of planes completely. The Spitfire is a Supermarine is the company that made the Spitfire. It's a Supermarine Spitfire. Its origins, if you will, come out of the Schneider Trophy.
Okay,
which was
what was that competition for?
Like a water boat, a seaplane racing competition.
Okay.
And so they would launch them off water and race them. I think it was highest speed. They were just trying to see who could go the fastest with the planes. And the objective, so I won't say the objective every year was to win, but not that it necessarily pertains directly to the Spitfire, but if a country were to win the Schneider Trophy 3 years in a row, they would keep the Schneider Trophy forever. Now, I guess that means that the Schneider competition would be over, but that was sort of the running rules, is that if a single country won it 3 consecutive years, then they would get to keep the trophy indefinitely.
It is the fastest seaplane over a fixed course. And it is a marble plinth with it looks like a copper or bronze casting of some crazy stuff on top. It's quite the trophy. Go ahead.
And I mean that started up in the early 1900s, so it was a fascination point at the time. That was just, there was research going on, there was money being dumped into it, but it was just sort of almost like the races today. It was a nice thing to watch and see. So Supermarine had built they had built one plane that had already won. And then they built, they had a second plane. I think it was the Type 244. I thought I had it in my notes here, but apparently I don't. But they had a second that won a design. And when Mitchell, I think the guy's name was Mitchell, he wanted to like get into the fighter industry, kind of rework how the British fighters were being built and what they were, because up to that point they were still flying a lot of biplanes, and they were wood construction and cloth and dope coated. Dope?
Yep.
That might be right.
Yeah, they're dope. It's yeah. I'm not even going to get into the details of that. We can have a whole episode on that. But we did talk about it in the World War II trainers, World War I trainers.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
I was making sure I was using the right term.
Yeah, it's dope.
So he wanted to diverge away from that and get into higher performance and things that he and his company had learned in the Schneider Trophy competition is what he used in the development of what would be the Spitfire. It started out with I think it was a Type 244, and he wasn't really satisfied with how that was going. So then they worked on the Type 300, and the Type 300 is what ultimately became what we know now as the Spitfire. And one of the big things that made the Spitfire unique was up to this point, planes were built and then they were wrapped, or they were skin wrapped. So all the structural stresses and all had to be handled by a skeleton in a plane, and then it was just coated. The Spitfire used, I believe they called it stress skin construction, where this was a metal airframe and metal skin, so the skin helped absorb and distribute, and was part of the structure and the stress management, I guess, if you will, of the overall plane design. So whereas they didn't then have to only have the skeleton of the plane trying to handle all that, they could send it out to the skin to then work it in other directions around the plane.
Yeah, considering that as a structural element allows you to lighten up the actual structure, the typical spar and structure that you would have. Because if some of those stresses are taken by the skin, you don't need to design it into the spar, making the whole plane much lighter.
Thank you.
Everybody knows lighter planes equals faster.
Yeah. It does, as does a thinner airfoil. So speaking of those elliptical wings earlier, the elliptical wings were chosen in part to allow enough airfoil space for. He wanted very thin airfoil, so he wanted very thin profile wings, and the elliptical wings allowed them to do that while still having the room to mount the 4 machine guns in each wing that they wanted to do. Yeah, so the thin airfoil was also allowed them to have the increased airspeed that they were going for with the Spitfire. But a disadvantage that came with the elliptical wing design was that, as we know, because our FT Spitfires are built to compensate for it with the undercamber on the wingtips, those elliptical wing airfoils can have tip stalling at low speeds. So that was something they had to kind of account for.
Yeah, and I think I hate. I'm gonna put the egg on my face and let you not have to take it. But I think they put a 2-degree twist at the outside of the wings. So they basically brought the backside, they twisted the outside of the wing down a little bit, and that helped ease the problem of the tip stalls. Because the inside of the wing would stall first before the outside. Because your angle of attack at the outside. So if the angle of the outside is down 2 degrees, so if you're at 45 degrees and the whole plane is stalling, but the outside of the wings is 43 degrees, it's still gaining lift. So you have lift at the outside and not in the center.
Okay, so that was designed to shunt the
Yes.
stall inward instead of it being at the wingtips.
Exactly.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right, that makes sense.
It's not the only plane to do that, and I'm absolutely blanking, and I had the name earlier about what it's called, but essentially, that's what they do. Is they twist the wing a couple degrees at the wingtips to help mitigate wingtip stalls. So go ahead. I think that was one of the first planes to really kind of, maybe not the first plane, but it's the one they talk about a lot.
Right. So we're going to dive into some specs on this.
Specs.
And when I'm talking these specs, I'm speaking largely the Spitfire Mark 1. So there were different generations of the Spitfire that occurred. And so some of them, I believe, got some shorter or wider wingspans, and there were some differences in length. The service ceilings were different. The maximum speeds were different as they got upgraded engines. In fact, over the course of the lifespan of the Spitfire, because of the way it was built and the engine compartment, the strength that they had around it, and the size of that compartment and all, I think the Spitfire started out with a little over 1,000 horsepower engine, and by the end of its service, the final design of the Spitfire had an over 2,000 horsepower motor.
Dang.
Mounted in there. Yeah, like you doubled your motor power over the course of this plane.
Yeah.
It's like, geez Louise.
Right, but then think about World War II, though. That was, by the end of the models of the Spitfire, that was the beginning of the jet age.
Getting there, yeah.
And you were trying to basically catch up to a totally different engine type that was far outpacing anything that was ever in the air. So at the time, go ahead.
Well, as a no, you're good. As an example, so after the Spitfire, they were working on development of a plane called the Spiteful, which then had a derivative design that I can't remember the name of. That was promising, but by that point, this was shortly after Spitfire, but by that point, basically this next generation of plane, they were already competing against the jets, and the jets were coming, and so they just discontinued to work on that.
Right.
Was just how quickly behind all this really jets started becoming a thing.
Right. Yeah.
So getting into those specs, Spitfires really started being produced 1938 through 1948 it looks like, and were in service till 1955. There was over 22,000 built. Now I'm not talking just the Mark 1s, I'm talking about all the variants of the Spitfire.
It's a lot of planes.
And again, these are largely Mark 1 stats. So wingspan was 36 foot, 30 foot length. Service ceiling service ceiling at 35,000 feet, airspeed 375 miles per hour. There was like a range, and then
right.
There was another. So there was a combat range that was a 248, but then it had another range. I don't remember what it was called, but basically it was sort of your less intensive fly range, and they might strap a tank underneath the plane that was considerably larger. Ferry range. That's what they called it.
Yeah, right.
If you were just going point to point and needed to cover a long distance, you strap another tank underneath, and basically it's bomb slot, and keep going. And then we started getting into the armaments. So the Spitfire was designed basically from the beginning to house 8 machine guns. That's what the guy that was designing this, Supermarine Mitchell, that's what he wanted, was to have 8 gun points on this, 4 in each wing. And so what became the A wing variant was your 8 303 Browning Mark II machine guns. So this became sort of the standard machine gun in the British Army or the British Air Force.
Yeah,
a few years prior.
I noticed that with a lot of the trainer planes we hit in the World War II era. They often, the British ones often from the RAF had that.
So that was sort of the standard. Each gun had 350 rounds. There was a problem with them, though. They performed really well at low and mid altitudes, But at high altitudes, the Browning machine guns suffered from freezing issues. So it would, get ice on it, freeze up. And I don't have it in my notes. I think the reason that was because the Brownings operated from an open chamber position.
Okay.
So it would fire, but then like slam back and leave the chamber open, which allowed air free access right through the barrel all the way back. So it would freeze up. So this was not immediately resolved like in the first couple months of production, but later in its first year, I think October 1938 or so, they fixed the issue by piping hot air from the radiators that were mounted in the rear of the wings.
Mm-hmm.
They would pipe hot air coming off those radiators up into the gun bays, which they had bulkheaded off to isolate them and let that hot air kind of hang out in there with them.
Yeah.
And then they would they'd put red fabric that had been doped over the gun ports.
Okay.
To prevent air, moisture, dirt, debris from being able to get into the gun bay. So at that point, they were largely insulated for flight until the first rounds were squeezed out, at which point the fabric was ripped and shattered, but you were in a fight at that point. You didn't need it anymore.
So that's why the Spitfires always have those little red, either has a red leading edge or red highlights, red squares along the wings.
Potentially, yeah. I didn't look that close at them, but yeah.
The picture I put in our notes has those, matter of fact.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah. I mean, I've always noticed it, and I always just thought it was because red is scarier.
Right.
I mean, if you're fighting it, I mean,
yeah.
It's like, ooh, oh no, they got red stuff. It's scary.
Also, and we'll get into this when we talk about another wing design. There's something else. They'll have little blisters on the wings, and that's due to another gun loadout.
Okay. I always thought it was landing gear.
So, so the landing gear kind of tucks up underneath, but no, they wouldn't be blistered on top or underneath because they mount flush. So what they started discovering was that their targets were becoming more heavily armored, or the targets that they were looking to take out were just more heavily armored than the machine guns could handle. And they were finding that it was taking, I don't know where they got this number or what they were shooting at, but it was something like 4,300 bullets out of the Browning machine guns to take down a target.
Boy, oh boy.
Yeah, so they needed to come up with a cannon option or something else capable of taking care of that armor. And so they came out with the B-wing variant, or the B-wing style. And when we're looking at these wings, these are just the wings. I want to say the wings could be detached and reattached to different fuselages. So you just like pull the wings off and put different wings back on. But don't quote me on that exactly. It's been a while.
Not exactly, but almost like the flight test. I mean, if you want to Frankenstein your plane, it's really not too hard to just take off the wing and put a different one on. Design a totally different thing and see how it flies. So
the B variant of the wing had two. So this is talking about both sides, but between the two sides, it would have two 20mm Hispano Mark II cannons. Those were 60 rounds per gun, and then 4 of the 303 Brownings.
Yeah, I think the 60 rounds was like it was like a cartridge, and it was almost like a Gatling gun where it has 60 rounds and it spins through it, and then that's it.
Yeah, so it has. I think it had like a drum magazine on it.
That's what
something.
I mean. Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas the other ones were linear.
Right, and the problem that they were having with these. So these Hispano cannons were actually jamming real bad on them.
Oh, okay.
But it was because these cannons, to fit them in the wings, were mounted sideways.
Oh, okay.
And with the B wings, you'll actually see they've got little blisters on the wings, and that was so that they could fit. They actually fit the drum magazine in there with the cannon.
Oh,
that's what that blister was about, was to make room for the magazine.
Nice.
But because the guns were because those cannons would jam up so bad, so one example was that one cannon jammed after one shot.
Ugh.
while the other didn't jam for 30 shots. But if one cannon jammed, the recoil off these was sufficient enough to, if only one was firing, to throw the aim of the pilot. It would twist the plane.
Oh, wow.
In flight. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they had some kick, I guess, huh?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Wow.
And then your C-wing variant was just straight cannon, so it had four of the 20 millimeter Hispano Mark II cannons, 120 rounds per. There was a C-wing alternate. I'm not entirely sure what that was utilized for. And then there was an E-wing variant that was 2 of the 20 millimeter cannons and 2 of the half-inch M2 Browning machine gun. So a bigger machine gun.
Yeah, instead of the point
coming out of there.
Right, instead of the 0.3 inch, which is what they started with.
Mm-hmm.
They're using a half inch, which
mm-hmm.
that's significantly bigger.
So those are just like wing variants on the initial Spitfire. Although I think that was generally sort of the classification across all the different variants. But you had again, there was the Mark I Spitfire, which is largely what I'm talking about, but then you had this Mark II. There was actually a Spitfire that was modified, I believe, to have the fold-up wings for use in the Royal Navy.
Right, I think those were called the Seafires, right?
They were, yep, the Seafires. Mm-hmm. And they were capable of flying out and landing on the carriers at the time.
Right, the ships with the wooden deck built on top. At the time. and then they've finally, they eventually upgraded those into being something more permanent.
The Spitfires were still carburetor driven, or carburetor fed, if you will.
Sure.
As opposed to their German counterparts, so the planes that they were sort of matched up against blow for blow in the German side. The German side had the fuel injection in their motors, which became a performance difference that mattered when Spitfires and I forget which German plane they were engaging, but when they would, I think it was them and one other.
The Junker. Junker, because I think Junkers were Russian, weren't they?
Anyway, so with the fuel injection, the German pilots saw this flaw in the British Spitfires and were able to take advantage of it, but the Spitfire would, when it went into a negative G maneuver, so if it happened to do an aileron roll, roll upside down, so it went into a negative G environment, the way the carburetor was set up, and this is just the case for carburetors, it would end up choking the engine or starving the engine. All the fuel would dump to the top of the carburetor bowl, and then as the bowl would continue to fill because it would bypass the float, and then when the plane, but it was upside down, it wasn't getting fuel, so by the time it rolled back over, that's when the engine was sputtering out,
right? Because it's
losing power.
Think of it like you have a container, like a cup with a straw, and it's sealed, so you turn the cup over, but you're still trying to suck stuff out of the container from the straw that's at the bottom of the glass, which is now at the top where there's no liquid.
At the top, right? There's nothing there,
and there's nothing there, so it's really getting no fuel at all getting put into the air mixture, so it can actually combust. We're going to put a link to Smarter Every Day. They did an amazing see-through carburetor, and they did a bunch of slow motion stuff on it. It's awesome. So I
saw that come across my feed, but I hadn't taken the time to watch that one yet.
I learned about combustion engines, specifically the carburetor, what it does, why, and how it works by watching this video. It really is awesome. I'm gonna make sure we link it. Go watch it if you don't know, if you're not intimate with your engine. But what Joe's talking about, it makes sense after you watch this video. It'll make complete sense. When it's upside down, the whole carburetor doesn't function because it needs gravity to work right.
Yeah, and unfortunately, there's only so much I can do speaking without a visual aid for you guys. But when you would then, so the engine was dying out because it didn't have any fuel. But as you continue to come out of that negative G environment, you would then flip over and have so I understand it was increased pressure pushing the fuel because your carburetor bowl was now overly full.
Yeah.
And so you would really, hammer the fuel to it, and you would actually choke your engine out with a mixture that was too rich.
Okay.
So you go into your negative G, you'd lose power because you were, out of gas essentially.
Yeah.
And then coming out of it, you would swamp your engine with the excess fuel that built up in the carb. So, way too much fuel. So, the fix that they had for this was by an engineer named Beatrice Schilling. She figured out a real simple way, or a real simple solution, was to take a brass ring and install it between the end of the fuel line and the entrance of the carburetor. And that restricted the fuel flow to the maximum flow that the plane could take in combat, or basically at full tilt, the maximum fuel that the carburetor, the motor could suck.
Right.
That's what that brass ring restricted it to. Rather than if the float popped open, it could just dump as much fuel as it wanted into the carburetor. This ring restricted it so that
it would only
had
take
a maximum flow rate.
Right.
Which helped to prevent when the plane rolled back over from having way too much fuel and just flooding itself out. Now, this didn't prevent the lack of fuel issue when the plane went upside down, but it did fix the
getting flooded
in the engine when it got back. And then later on, 1942, I don't know a whole lot about the pressure carbs, but 1942 they came out where they figured out the pressurized carburetors that would prevent the negative G issues that they were experiencing in the first place. But because there was that issue, the German pilots knew about it, and they knew they knew that if they got in a bad spot with the Spitfires, they could like roll and yank, sort of flip inverted, and just nose up, which would be nose down, and just peel away. And the Spitfires, because they couldn't flip inverted to then chase them like that, they didn't have the dive capacity to go after them in the same way.
Yeah.
And so they could escape rather than get, if they got themselves in a bad spot, the German pilots could just flip and roll and go.
Yeah. Yeah. That's pretty cool. I mean, that is pretty much when everything is almost equal. It's those little nuances that make all the difference in air combat or anything really having to do with warfare, really.
And that's just, again, a surface scratch on all the information that's out there. Like, again, a lot of mine came out of YouTube as far as the documentaries I was watching, because you can just find old shows on there, and they go through the history of it, the construction. You can see, just go hit it up if you want to learn some more. I'll try to have some links that we can put in the show notes for stuff that I was watching, that I pulled my information from, and that's what I enjoyed watching.
Excellent. Yeah, no, that's wonderful. I think we should. I'm looking forward to that. I already have the link in our show notes for the carburetor, and I'll tell you what. Like, understanding how an engine works, which it is a relatively simple machine, a gasoline or nitro or whatever, and then understanding what is a carburetor and why is that so important. And then once you realize how it works, you realize exactly why the Spitfire couldn't work in the negative G. It's awesome. So thank you. That was a really good description, because once you started to talk about it, I'm like, okay, now I get it.
Yeah.
Nice.
And we both enjoyed the Spitfires. And now, having done the research into them, like, it's just doubled up that love. Like, it's just that it makes the plane that much cooler now that I know what I know about it. And again, I've forgotten a lot, but at the time that I was digging through a watch, I was just like, oh, that's so cool. That's so cool. That's so cool. I love this plane.
I know, right? Yeah. So, hey, look, next time I'm sure you're going to continue to learn about it. When you either remember or find a new little fact, maybe we'll have like a Spitfire fact.
Maybe.
Somewhere myths.
There's too many plays out there to be trying to have. I don't know. We'll see. I just don't want the Spitfire to be the only plane we ever like really truly hit on a regular.
It's the only one worth it. I'm just kidding. That's absolutely so not true. This is coming
That's
from
yeah.
this is coming from a guy who has over 50 foam board planes. Each one I've done like avid research on every time I go into the build.
Mhm.
I know more about these planes than I ever thought I would want to. So anyway, well, thank you, Joe, for putting that together and giving us some information about the Spitfire.
Yeah, man.
Nice. All right. I guess that brings us to our next topic. And it is something that has recently come out. And if you are a member of the AMA, you have received an email. And if you're like me and don't ever check it, you would go, what are you guys talking about? But go back and look, you'll find it. It's relatively recent. So I think at the beginning of July, the FAA asked the AMA to administer a knowledge test. And it was a mandate from the FAA to have the AMA issue to its membership a general knowledge and safety test. And so they call it TRUST. So it is the recreational UAS, so that's unmanned aerial systems safety test. So TRUST, so TRUST.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a no-fail knowledge and safety awareness test for flying under the recreational flying rules. Let's see, and that is PL 115-254 section 349 / USC 44809. That is
the numbers.
Yeah, it's a lot. We'll have a link to the information on that in the show notes for sure. Go check it out if you haven't actually done the thing. But basically, it is the exception for limited recreational operations of unmanned aircraft rules. So that's what that is, and that is the official statute number that you have to go and look it up. And so who does this apply to? It is the FAA through the community-based organizations like AMA, and I imagine the FTCA, Flight Test Community Association, for all recreational UAS pilots. So that's like basically all the RC flyers who are flying under the recreational flying rules, which, again, that part that I just labeled, it's under their recreational flying rules. So there's in the link in your email that you got from the AMA, there is a link to go to their page. And as a member of AMA, you'll receive a link and it goes to the FAA page, and it is https:// or is that backslash?
Those will be forwards.
/ trust.modelaircraft.org. And then from there, you'll see a couple, like watch a video on the information that's in the test so you get familiar with it. And then would you like to take the test? It was deployed on February 22nd, 2021, according to what I saw, although it looks like in the actual test and the links and all that stuff kind of hit just recently. It honestly, I just recently did it myself, and it takes about 15 minutes. There's no renewal required at this time of recording. There's no renewal required. So once you do this, you're not going to have to do it again. And it's basically trying to help you be aware of the rules with which you need to fly by. And we'll cover what those are in a second here. There's no cost for the fee, or there's no fee for the test. It's free. And you don't have to make an account, as I saw it, with the FAA. Obviously, if you're a member of the AMA, you already have an account through them. But I think you do have to. Did you have to put your information in there, Joe?
No. So I did take the test. I'll put that one out there. The only information I had to put in was my first and last name after it was all said and done.
Right. And that's what gets printed on the certificate, I think, right?
Right. And so I remember watching a YouTube video. A guy was explaining the trust test. I think I watched
Josh Bardwell?
2 different videos. It might have been.
He has a good one.
But I watched like 2 or 3 where they were talking about it. And one of the things and why I say, why I wasn't too concerned about them not asking for a bunch of information was that they're not supposed to, as I understand, they're not supposed to be storing information.
Right.
Like, there's no online records, there's no records with the FAA or anything about you've completed this. They're not going to be able to go into their records. They're not going to be able to go to whatever website that you took it at and pull the records because it's not saved, nothing's sent in. They're asking for my name so they could, stick it on this form, and there's an authentication token that I have no idea what it means other than I took the test.
Yeah, and I think all it basically says is it's a confirmation that you took the test and passed it. Mm-hmm. Which means to say all the information was explained to you and you understood it enough to find the correct answers.
And the whole thing with that was, excuse me, even if you didn't have, you chose the wrong answer, it was, oops, try again, pick the right answer kind of thing.
Said, this is why that's the wrong answer. And hey, the right answer is over here and this is why.
Right. Like, this was specifically a no-fail test.
Yeah.
You're not going to fail this thing. You take I think it probably took me 25 minutes when I took it last night, but I was almost falling asleep at the keyboard at the time anyway.
I'm surprised you were up after what we...
after the weekend we had,
oh my gosh, it was a lot of running around, so it's very...
Yeah, it was.
It was fun and exhausting. So with this... I guess the difference here is like Part 107 versus recreational operations of unmanned aerial systems. Like, what's the difference? Well, Part 107 is flying for the furtherance of a business. So again, if you've got like a realtor buddy who says, hey, could you fly this stuff? You've got some FPV. I'd love to get some footage to put up for clients. I don't want you to get in trouble. So I'm like, if you could do it, I'm not going to pay you. So it's not like a business thing. It will still help his business. Just like when we put videos on YouTube, well, YouTube's a business. And ultimately, us putting videos on YouTube ends up furthering that business. So, we ride kind of a fine line, and the FAA has every right, if they care to start cracking down on people putting videos of themselves flying and saying it's under recreational operation. It's like, well, but you posted the video to YouTube, and thereby you're helping YouTube.
That'll be interesting to look into because Shore is helping YouTube, but as the hobbyist, like, say I want to upload a video, like, I'm not a channel big enough because it's just a personal channel. I upload stuff, share it in the Discord. So people go, look, I don't have the subscriber count to monetize my content.
Yeah.
And even the podcast YouTube channel doesn't have the subscribers to monetize. So we don't really have a business that's benefiting.
Right. But your content has ads that get placed by YouTube, whether you like it or not. Mm-hmm. Those ads make money for YouTube. Anybody who watches your stuff is making money for YouTube. And consequently, that could be the sticky wicket. Now, you can also post your video and make it private and then copy that link to the Discord that we talk on and show people your stuff there, because the only people who are going to be able to get to your video, you can't look it up, you can't find it, you can't see it unless you have that link directly. So that might be more likely to be a safeguard against potentially accidentally flying under Part 107, even though that was not your intent. So, and that's really the difference is, are you helping a business when you're doing your stuff? And if you're not, and you want to I'm just flying for fun. And there's some people who have Part 107s and be like, but what I'm doing here isn't for my channel. It's not for my show. It's not for, my business. It's not for this. I just want to fly. I just want to have fun.
And you fly differently under recreation versus Part 107.
Yeah, you definitely do. And some of the rules are, they're a little less stringent, but they're also a little bit more stringent in other ways. So, but basically, if you want to fly under the exception for limited recreational operation of unmanned aircraft rules, and then that's that long, if you want, I could say the number again, then the FAA is requiring that you have trust. You take the trust test, you have your certificate, and you have it on you. Mm-hmm. Okay. And so what happens is after you're done with the test, there's a deliverable. Basically, they send you a PDF, and that PDF is a printable card. And I've got mine. I don't believe I have mine on me, but I've printed all the. On the front side, it basically has your name, and it has that you've succeeded in passing the test, competency test, and knowledge and safety test, and you are allowed with this card to fly under those rules. And it has, the link and reference. And then on the back, it has a list of things that basically you're agreeing to by flying under recreational rules. So it kind of sums it up for you in case you forgot from ages ago when you took the test. Okay, so the requirements and limitations. The drones that are over 0.55 pounds or 250 grams are registered with the FAA. That's a $5 fee that basically you register the FAA as a drone pilot or as a UAS pilot, and then you basically kind of identify what what craft you have in your fleet, and then that registration covers the pilot, and you put your FAA registration number on your craft, so it should be visible from the outside, and you have it on there, and it goes over pretty clearly what that is.
And just for clarification, what you're reading off now, these requirements, limitations, are these sort of the short code that's written on the back of that card?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So basically, if you are flying a craft that's under 250 grams, it doesn't need to be registered with the FAA. It's essentially what that first part is. If it is, you need to let the FAA know you're flying something that's over, over half a pound, pretty much, or 2 sticks of butter. That you're flying for recreational purposes. You're not trying to make money with it. You're not charging anybody for this, etc. You're flying in accordance with the community-based organization rules. So if you're flying at an AMA field or you're flying at Flight Test, the Flight Test community, anywhere either on their grounds or at Flight Fest or anything like that, they have a list of rules in it. You basically are agreeing to fly by their guidelines.
And I think even if you're not flying at a field controlled by a CBO or community-based organization, so even if I'm like flying in some random field, like 20 minutes down the road from my house, I still have, as I understood it, I still have to be able, if I'm asked, to say, these are the safety guidelines I'm flying under.
I'm flying under
this organization is who I follow.
Exactly, yeah. And you're saying, hey, these are the AMA guidelines that I follow for safety, and they consist as follows, and if
like you need to be able to say this is what I fly under,
and they all essentially they're very similar.
Very similar, yeah.
So always fly visual line of sight, right? That's really important, and that's part of. There's a good chunk of the test that covers what constitutes visual line of sight, like what's okay and what's not. Did you always give way to manned aircraft? Period.
Always.
And that makes sense. I've never had a problem with that. I'm never like, get that big plane out of my way. I'm flying my RC stuff. No. Anyway, but it's a good reminder. Like that is, them's the rules. If there's a life on board, an aircraft coming your way, you get out of the way. Then you basically, you gain authorization to fly in controlled airspace, which, so basically if you're near a tower or in, near a city or something like that, where they control the airspace, you can't fly over a certain height or whatever, you can gain low altitude authorization and notification capabilities. That's a LANCE system. We'll provide a link to that. And that basically you log onto there and you tell them like, hey, I want to fly up to what I'm allowed to. Like in Fayetteville, there are sections of the city that you cannot fly in it because it's basically the approach to the airport, right? But in other parts of the city, it's not in the pattern, and you can fly up to 200 or 300 feet, or maybe it's a certain part of the pattern. They want you to basically kind of keep low. But if that's what you want to fly, you can basically make a request through the LANCE system and say, hey, I'd like to fly my craft recreationally over here, and this is what I'm going to do for the next day or next 3 hours. And it says, okay,
Mhm.
cool, thanks. And then it basically puts the FAA on notice that there might be a craft over there, and
Now, can the Lance system decline your request, or is it not a request? Is it more I'm informing you?
You are requesting authorization to fly. So
Okay.
you can always be denied, but it is a fairly automated system. And as long as what you're requesting is typically within the rules, as long as there's not, let's say, the president's coming into town, the answer is going to be
Right.
no. Like, period. The answer will be no. Unless there's something unusual going on, chances are, if you're within the general guidelines as to what's allowed, you'll probably automatically accept it. So, and then the last one is outside of controlled airspace, don't fly higher than 400 feet. Let's see, this certification card has to be available to and be producible to the FAA or the law enforcement officials upon request. So that is part. So you want to keep that on your person so that they understand that you have passed, you've gone through and taken this safety guideline test. If you don't have it on you, they assume that you don't know, and that could be trouble, I guess.
That could be a problem, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Go ahead, sorry.
No, I mean, I'm just trying to think. I'm like, what situation? I mean, I know right now, this is mostly pretty new, but what it does is allows police officers who have received complaints to be able to come out and start talking to you just to make sure that you're not doing something that's potentially harmful. And this is one of the methods that they can say, no, he's doing things. They're doing what they should be doing. And it's proven that he's at least knowledgeable and capable and, competent to do this stuff. So, they may still ask you to stop, but at least they have something to start with.
Well, going back to the Lance system for a moment. So the Lance was for requesting, and I don't know if you can view your local airspace and view the conditions that are going on there through Lance. I didn't look into Lance too deeply when I was taking the trust test. What I did look into was that before you fly, so the letter B, numeric 4, so Bravo 4, U, I think it was the letter U, fly, but so there's an app called Before You Fly that I downloaded on my phone that tracks my GPS position. You give it permission to, and it'll show you the airspace around you and any airspace classifications that you may be under. So, it makes sense because I have jets that fly over my house all the time, but I didn't realize that there was flight restrictions at, above my house, which, again, it makes sense, but I can see on the other side of town, there's military installation. I can see the restricted space around it, but I was able to kind of zoom out and look in nearby areas. So I was wondering, hey, is the school that I was flying at, does it have special airspace conditions? And at least at the moment that I looked at it, no. So that's, if I suddenly found that one of the places I was going to plan to fly at had limitations, then I guess I would go to Lance and file a request if I was wanting to fly in that area. That's how that would work.
That's what it seems to be. I haven't had to go. I mean, there's been a couple different, I'm trying to remember. So before this, I guess, got hot and heavy, there were a couple drone, I'll call it a drone announcement, like, hey, I'm going to fly in this area. And it was the way you requested permissions from the FAA. Lance was one, but there was another one. And I've used that before. And, you have to give it a significant amount of information. Like they know who you are. And, if you have registered with the FAA, like that number is part of it. Your AMA number is part of it. Like they understand who you are and what guidelines you're working under when you register and when you're making that request. So basically you're not saying like, hey, I'm mysterious guy. I want to fly something over here. I promise you it'll be cool. No, right. They want enough information that basically if there's something that goes wrong or they have complaints that they can talk to you and try to figure out what happened.
Okay.
That's what it seems to be. Anyway, so we have some links to that stuff. If you want, put the Before You Fly link down there in the show notes so that we'll have that for you guys if you're interested in getting a little bit more information on that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that with that, I think that brings us to close up the show.
Okay. Anything else before we get into the workbench?
Well, basically, I just, hey, if you're at Flight Fest, I mean, you may be listening to this at Flight Fest. And if you are,
okay, it's cool.
awesome. Come out and find us. We'll be in the camping session, and we'll be volunteering somewhere. I'll probably be in the STEM tent. I don't know where you're going to be, Joe, but I'm sure you'll be somewhere running around.
I'll figure something out.
Yeah, look for us. It will be in probably blue shirts with our logo on somewhere on the shirt. It'll probably be kind of small with a host.
Unless we're volunteering, do they have us wear volunteer shirts so we stand out at that point?
Well, while you're volunteering, you'll have a volunteer shirt.
Okay, that makes sense.
Right. So, or we'll have some, like everybody else, a bunch of quippy RC pilot shirts. We also have we'll have limited run mugs, and if we have them, and you'd like one, come up and let us know, and we'll for $25, we'll make sure you get home with a mug of ours. It shows everybody you're a listener.
Okay, so very quickly, I don't think I've actually asked what's on the listener mug. Is it like ours logo on the front and on the back is just Aviation RC New Podcast Listener?
No, it actually is. I listened to hours of this show, and all I got was this stupid mug.
Okay. All right, cool. Well, now people know what's on the mug.
Yeah. Maybe we can put a picture of it on our website.
Okay.
Cool.
Fair enough.
I guess that brings us to our workbench.
Yeah, so what's going to be on the workbench is going to be whatever we're doing at Fly Fest right now.
Well, what do you want to be working out at? That wasn't even English.
Yeah, it's okay. I've got you, but we'll come back to you when you get your break. So I'll be working on. I'll be hopefully finishing up the 7 up at Flight Fest, and finish up 7. Getting the Corsair back into flying condition, which shouldn't take a bunch. I just gotta get in and glue in some stuff, and I hopefully get some firewalls. I never did order the wood firewalls, so
well, I mean, they'll definitely have them there.
Yeah, and then I still have to rebuild the power pod for the Fogey, and then while we're up there, if you get the Spitfires kind of rough cut, then I'm going to be building a Spitfire.
Yeah, heck yeah.
And I'm not saying I want to get all that done at Flight Fest because I know how slow I build, but. Now, if I get that 7 built, I would love it if you could help me with doing that landing gear setup like you had on yours.
Oh, yeah, man. Yeah.
Because that's one that needs landing gear, I think.
That's the best landing gear I've ever made. It turned out really good.
and I want some.
Yeah. Well, I'll have my 7 with me, so we can use that as an example. Even if I do crash it, I will make sure I save the landing gear. Honestly, that'll probably be the only thing that survives.
Do I need to go buy some wire before I come up, or do you have some?
I'll look to see if it was landscaping wire or if it was 1/8 inch.
No, it had to have been the 1/8 inch. Landscaping wire wouldn't have been strong enough for what you were doing.
Yeah. I'll go.
Remember, I made the Fogey landing gear.
Yeah.
Out of that,
I'll go check
landscaping wire.
I'll go check. I think it is 1/8 inch, but I remember doing the little pins, the little hooks, and I can't imagine trying to do that out of anything but landscaping wire.
Well, maybe those were landscaping wire.
Right. It could be the main gear was 1/8 inch.
And
the other stuff was landscaping wire. So, all right. Well, I'll take a look and I'll text you for sure. So I'm going to bring my Texan for sure. I'm going to bring my Prandtl wing for certain. I'm going to finish up I'll call it the flight test style one, the one where you keep the paper on both sides and just score as opposed to roll. I would love to be able to finish either the car plane or the J1000 before we go up. But I know I want to get the Silver finished, and I will probably bring the spruce goose.
Okay.
I mean, I'll probably just bring it. And I'm hoping that there'll be enough time and friendship and joy that we can manage to get that thing up in the air. I really want to get that thing working. I've got it sitting here, and I've been like thinking about it the last week, trying to figure out how I can test it before I go. I'd love to have it working, and then go, well, at least it was working.
Right.
But I mean, so the idea is basically the next couple days, my workbench is finish up the couple quick, easy things, cut out the Spitfires, and pack. And that'll be full enough, I'm sure.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Good. Well, then I think without any further ado, we have the build night. Don't forget, will be on the 23rd. So it'll be the week after Flight Fest. Just keep an eye out for that in our local haunting places. And let's finish it up.
All right. Well, guys, as always, thank you for tuning in and listening. Hopefully, these conversations have been beneficial and enjoyable for you as they were for us. As always, if you have any questions, thoughts, want to talk to us, let us know about something, feel free to reach out to us. You can reach us both at aviationrcnoob@gmail.com. You can reach Matthew at aviationrcnoob.com, or you can reach me at joe@aviationrcnoob.com. Let us know how you're enjoying, I suppose, the shorter episode formats. I know Matthew and I have a history of running longer episodes, and while we're not trying to make episodes crazy short, we have talked about just kind of trimming them down and making them a little more bite-sized. So if the shorter format's working a little better for you, be sure do let us know if this is a better length, or if we ought to return more to, just because I know we're on an every other week release schedule. But
let us know what you think of the history sections, or if you want, let me know if you want me to shut up about the full scale aviation journey, or if you'd like to hear more about it. I mean, how much detail would you like to hear?
And if you've got a World War II fighter plane that you'd like to hear more about, let us know.
Oh, please.
And we can start looking into some of that so we can talk about it.
Or if you have a story to share about one. Yeah, let us know. I'd love to read it out and share it with all of our listeners here.
Absolutely. All right, and next episode, we'll be talking about our adventures at Flight Fest, yeah?
Yeah, it'll definitely be, at best, a post-mortem. I think at worst it'll be post-mortem and any interviews we might manage to nab while we're there.
All right. Well, guys, we're looking forward to it. Hopefully you're looking forward to it, and we will see everybody next time.
See you then. You got a nice mug there, sir.
You too.
Yeah.
It's very fitting. Look, mine says host.
Mine does too. Look at that.
Oh, would you look at that?
It's like they were made just for us.
No kidding. I love one of the comments. That dude pulled off a beard and a mullet. That skill. Turn your webcam on, Matthew.
What do you mean? Oh, fuck. I had to restart it. Hello, and welcome back to Aviation RC Noob Podcast.
Thank you for joining us this wonderful Monday evening. I am your host, Joe, and this is my co-host, Matthew.
Hi, how's it going?
Going great, pal. This is getting worse as we go.
Right. Well, when we're not talking about anime, playing D&D, we're talking about airplanes. The remote control kind. Whoa.
What?
Line of sight, baby.